Okay, and welcome. Okay, so this is Crypt, and today we are on Outriders. Nice, beautiful view. We are finally going to do the breakdown of my builds, the Technomancer Tank builds that I showcase in my live streams. You'll have to bear with me. I was on earlier today, but apparently I'm starting to have some trouble with my voice. Hopefully it won't be a big deal, and we can get through this without any issues. Give me just a second. Okay, so to start off here, let's get right into this. We're going to leave the gear for last because that's complicated. We should probably start with, let's see. Let's start with our abilities, right? So, first off, we have, just like the thing shows, Cold Snap here. Sorry, Cold Snap. You drop a little gadget, freezes everything around you in a big radius. After that, we got it down to a 7.1 cooldown. After that, the next ability here is a decay ability. It's a turn. Place an automatic turn that deals 43,863 damage, blah, blah, blah. Who cares about the damage right now? That's just what it says it does. And inflicts toxic on the enemies. Its health depletes slowly over time when it takes damage. And when it takes damage. But the important thing is it's a decay. We got a gadget ability, we got a decay ability, and we got a turn. So, kind of just like this thing shows, you can put that out, you can freeze everything around you. It's a nice thing, it's got a really good AoE. This ability here, it shows you able to hold the button down, and then you can actually choose where you throw it and toss it out, and then it throws just like that, little acid, I guess you'd call it flamethrower, which is super cool, okay? Let's see here. I think I know why I'm having trouble talking, actually. Let's see, but it doesn't matter. Anyways. So, on to the next thing. So the next thing here we have is the cryo turn. So the cryo turn, oh, by the way, so it shows you holding this down to toss it, right? You do not need to go through that whole wait period. You can just tap the button, set up, and it will just toss the item out. Then we have here the cryo turn. Places automatic turn that deals 70,000 damage and 79. Inflicts freeze on enemies. The turn's health depletes slowly over time and when it takes damage. This is another gadget. So that's a decay. That's a gadget. And that's a gadget. And these two are turrets. Okay. This one freezes. Is long range. You can hold it just like before. The range is like super long, like the map. This thing here is got a very limited range. Okay, so the next thing, let's see here. So we're gonna move into the class skill tree here. Okay, the basic skill tree. We're gonna move into this first because this is the first thing you deal with. This is the first thing you deal with when you're leveling up your character. So, to start off with here, okay, I don't remember which order I went up in. It doesn't really matter much, honestly. I probably fiddled around a lot with this on my way up. Actually, I'm pretty sure I did. But let's start with the small tree here first. So, this little branch off we did here, increased the anomaly power by 15%. Resistance piercing by 15%, and anomaly power by 15%. So that's quite obvious, right? Those are mainly just passive things. But I'm running turrets. They're doing damage, so the more my anomaly power, the more damage they deal. Resistance piercing will allow me to get through more of the enemy's resistance, allow me to do more damage. Your melee class skill also inflicts toxic on every enemy hit. Now, in this build, we're going to melee a lot. In one second. And because we're meleeing a lot, what's going to happen is this is also going to put toxin on those enemies we hit. Now, as a Technomancer, and I should have gone over this first, your melee skill does, well, it says that for damage, and inflicts freeze to all enemies within a small radius. Well, now it'll also inflict toxin on every enemy hit as well. As the Technomancer, you will come in the portion you deal as damage, so it gives you a flat-out skill and weapon leech, right? The 15-15. Awesome. Everything you do automatically heals you. Okay? Toxin is considered a power, which is considered a skill leech. Okay? Any sort of status is affected by skill leech. Now I want you to understand that, okay? Any status that does damage from the statuses, not from weapon mods or something like that, but statuses. You know, freeze don't do damage, but burn, toxin, bleed, all of those are considered skill damage, and they leech HP for you, okay? So, by putting that ability on, my melee attack now damages enemies, stops them cold, causes a DOT on them, and heals me because of it. Not just because of the initial hit of the attack, but then over time as well afterwards. Now, let's see here. Increases your max health by 10%. This is the main tree, right? Obvious, it's just something I had to get through to continue down the tree, so let's go. So I picked both of these. So first off and foremost, we're going to go with the top one. Now, increase your resistance by 20%. It doesn't seem like, I could have just skipped that off, maybe get a power up to damage or something, but honestly, resistance is a lot harder to come by in this game than you might think, and it's important to be strong enough to still take the hit, no matter how tough you are. I know that seems weird by what I just said, but, all these mechanics only work together because there's enough damage negated to actually do it. If you're constantly dying from every single power attack that hits you because you don't have any resistance, it still wouldn't work. So you need resistance of some sort at all times in any build, really. The next one down here is going to be increases gadgets cooldown by 15%. We want run 2 gadgets in the decay ability. This is a hands down, has to be in the build since we already run 2 gadgets. We want them to come out as fast as possible. So I think I figured out why my voice is gone. I ate a bite of my banana nut muffin, and apparently I forgot that I became allergic to bananas a couple years ago. Sorry about that. Anyways, tangent. So the next one is max life. We had to do that. After that, let's see. The next one down here, before we go to the right, is after using your class melee skill, increases damage mitigation by 40% for 3 seconds. Now, 3 seconds is not a long time. It probably kicks in the moment you activate the skill, so you lose a full second during the animation. But nonetheless, it is a portion of time where you have 40% extra mitigation, potentially can cast a move or two before the other 2 seconds are up. Try to rotate it back into the melee attack if you can. If I had to reduce cooldown on melee attacks, it wouldn't be as big of a deal. So, but that right there, that juicy little effect of reducing any and all damage by 40%, even including powers and stuff, means that when you're about to take a big hit, you can melee and tank through the hit. Not just because your melee tanks through the hit because the animation will cancel any knockback animations and shit like that, but, and by the way, melee attacks will cancel out knockback animations. And unfreeze you. But also because it gives you the damage resistance to actually take that freaking hit. And since you've done your melee, you've potentially frozen and toxic. The toxic is almost always so now that you meleeed, you've taken a hit, you've reduced the damage, you've stood your ground, you've potentially frozen them, and you're dealing damage over time now while you're doing your other shit. and healing off of that as well as the melee attack originally. So it's all got a purpose. It all wraps back up into each other, okay? So the next thing we have is enemies afflicted with freeze receive 10% more damage. I freeze with my first skill here. That freezes everything around, causing them to take extra damage from the 10%, which means anything I do to them at this point will make them take more damage. That includes my turrets, which are also hitting them, and the toxic that's on them as well. Okay. I meant to do this walkthrough a little bit less congested, we'll say. I chose that over the armor one here because armor isn't as necessary as you might think. You get armor from gear and everything. It's in the game. It's on bonuses. It's on damage absorber. You know, you have the damage mitigation from the class thing. It's just, there's armor, you know, and there's armor in the game, and you're never going to reach the Devastator number, so there's no reason to, like, try to focus into it. It's just a waste of skill point as far as I'm concerned. The next thing we have to take, and this, like I said, it raises everything, you know, it raises the damage you do with your status effects and everything. So that's important. And we freeze everything constantly. Then we have more max life because we didn't have any other choice. That's just what the tree makes us do. Then we have reduced gadget skill cooldown again. Of course, we run 2 gadgets in this build. So we need these. Okay, they make our main 2 of our attacks come back faster, which is important. Okay, and that is enticing, and technically in this build you could argue that it'd be quite potent. But as far as I'm concerned, the loss of the extra 15% of the cooldown and the less ability to put out the abilities, to proc certain things like Untamed Power, I believe it's called, and such, you know, losing that outweighs the benefit of that. And you'll see why it's so beneficial later, not just because of the leech. Let's see here. Then we have increases max health by 10% again. Again, we didn't have much choice here. That's just what we have, right? There's this ability up here, increases turret health by 100%. Your abilities come out so fast, there's no reason to ever get this ability. It's a waste. And frankly, you want your turrets to be able to come out fast so that you can reposition them as necessary. Sorry, I had to hang now. Anyways. So, next down is every time freeze is afflicted on enemy, vulnerable status is afflicted as well. Now, I want you to understand this. Cold Snap freezes everything around, right? Sorry about the pause. So Cold Snap freezes everything around. When it does that, it makes everything vulnerable. When things are vulnerable, they take extra damage. Not only do they take the extra damage, but when I ever freeze something, they take 10% more damage. So they're vulnerable, plus taking the extra 10%. Now remember, too, our melee attack freezes enemies. So, you melee, you freeze, you toxin, causing them to take 10% extra damage from that being frozen, and making them vulnerable, making them take the extra damage from everything in the future, including the toxin. See where this is going? It all wraps back into itself. Okay, freeze lasts longer, that's important. It's crowd control. Crowd control is always important. Always, it's a much better option than the armor. Increases your weapon reach by 5%. Now, that is just there. There's nothing we can do. It has to be there, but it's actually really good for the build. Then we have armor, because again, we can't get past it. We have to do it. We have this ability up here, increases all healing received, but it's useless, honestly. You should always be able to heal up anyways from the damage you're dealing. And I did that, so yay me. which is nice, and it helps. It will increase the healing for you and your allies, which is great, and lots of their life lead should be better and all that good junk. But it's not really a part of the build. Now, once again, at the top here, we could have gone with skill leech, right? And skill leech would have been a big boost to us. But and for this build and the way it works, but it's not really exactly what we're looking for. So, down below here, hold on. My apologies. So, down below here, enemies inflicted with freeze receive 30% more damage. Okay, so that stacks in with that. Okay, just like we were talking about before. So now, even with just like, for instance, Cold Snap here. By the way, welcome to the walkthrough, the build guide showcase. And just with Cold Snap here, we're going to freeze them, which is going to cause them to take 10% here, and 30% here. So, depending on how the math works in this, I don't know whether they add it up in the way where you lose a little bit through the percentages or not, but we're just going to say it's additive. So, 40% extra damage there, plus they're vulnerable. Now, that's just the Cold Snap. Now, if it's a melee attack, they freeze, they take damage, they take toxic, plus they take the 40% extra damage, plus they're vulnerable. And the 40% and the vulnerable increase the damage to toxic does, which heals me over time as well, causing me to just constantly be healing. Next part here is the capstone we have, right? Activating gadget skill increases your anomaly power and weapon damage by 40% for 10 seconds. Honestly, as you can see in the skills thing here, there is not a single ability I have that doesn't, doesn't take 10 seconds. Nothing is 10 seconds long. So you always have that. Hands down, you will always have that power up. You will always be getting that increase. Upon losing all your health, you receive a second chance to return to the battlefield with 50% of your max health. In fact, it may occur once every 180 seconds. Before we get into this, just remember the anomaly power and weapon damage buffs there, of course, is just going to buff everything across the table. So that's just really nice. But as the second part here, the game itself has a built-in mechanic that's sort of like that when you take a lethal hit. It's got an internal cooldown as well. They added it in later. It wasn't in the initial version, but they added it in later because people dying to like the impalers and such. With this one here, I basically just have a second layer of it. So depending on which one gets kicked into cooldown, I still have another one. Though I'm going to be honest with you, I was running this before that kicked in, and I still wasn't having any issues. And all they did with those updates is honestly make this whole build tougher. Okay, so that covers the basic tree here for the Technomancer, okay? Now, let's see, what is the next? Honestly, I think the best thing, well, we're going to look at the Ascension real quick because it's kind of meaningless. So we're kind of going through and doing the anomaly stuff for now, status power, skill leech, all that kind of stuff. But all this stuff caps out. It's all got a set limit. It's really just designed to help to continue allowing your character to balance with the changes to the apocalypse tiers. Because as you go up in apocalypse tiers, the enemies get, resistance to resistance piercing. You get what I'm saying? Like, they get harder to hurt with all those things. They get resistance to lifesteal and such. Let's see if we can see that here. So, yeah, those are gains, those are challenges. So yeah, so they get more life, they resist weapon leech, they resist skill leech, they resist, actually they get some weak to their own. Yeah, the status power penalties, yeah. So they're doing a lot of things that reduce your stats to begin with. Where was I? And these right here, they help counterbalance that a little bit. Okay, and that's what these are for. Cooldown reduction and stuff like that, which are all things that kind of get penalized if you go into the higher tiers. Give me 1 second. Okay, so really, that's what this is. That's what it is. Think of it like if you play Diablo 3, it'd be like the Paragon points in Diablo 3 before you start, getting, before you hit like 200. And then once you hit like, I think it was like 200 or some crap like that, you were just hitting those infinite stages for your main stat and health. So we're going to ignore that part. For the same thing though, it's kind of, it builds up all the little abilities on your character to keep you balanced with the game itself. Now, we're going to move into the pack, okay? Now, the packs wraps together everything really nice, allows it to synergize really nice, but it still comes down to the gear and the mods as well. It all matters. The whole build is all about synergy. It all matters together. It all does something that helps something else or allows me to do something that I wouldn't be able to deal with or something. So, once again, it just shows the Technomancer thing there. Then we have up here, activating skills increases your anomaly power or firepower by 10% for 5 seconds, depending on which one of them is higher. Now, as you can see there, my anomaly power is quite a bit higher than my firepower. Now, there are buffs that may give me firepower boosts and everything else, but the idea here is to focus on your anomaly power so that it's generally always higher. So you should really be getting this buff always to your anomaly power. Plain and simple. 1 second. Sorry. Okay, I do apologize for that. Anyways, so the next thing we have here is your ordnance and gadget skills inflict toxic enemies, hit and deal additional 5% of anomaly power and damage if toxic was refreshed. Now, this ended up being hands down one of the most powerful packs abilities they even put out when they brought the packs of things out. It really was, and they actually, if I remember correctly, toned it down a little bit. But nonetheless, it's really, really powerful, and I inflict toxic all the time to begin with other things. That allows me to inflict toxic with everything, including my cryo and my cryo turn and my cold snap. Now, remember that in the beginning when I said about the cold snap? And now it was comparing it to the melee, and the melee always had a little bit higher up because of the toxic effect. Well, guess what? Now this applies toxic, which means even with the cold snap, I am applying toxic and freeze, causing 40% extra damage and vulnerability, and the event toxic that I applied is getting all those bonuses, and I leech off of every tick of toxic because it's considered skill damage. So it all comes right back together, which means, honestly, with just that one ability, Cold Snap, I can lock down a field for a few seconds, dealing damage to him constantly, even after I cast my ability, and full heal from anything that I've taken. Okay, so it's a huge ability. Now, that Cold Snap's not going to proc the lethal devices very much at all. But what it is going to be your cryo turns. These guys right here. Now, there are a lot of things on the cryo turns we can put on to increase how many times they hit. And that's what we did with this build, too, to try to make them hit as many times as possible to really capitalize on the lethal devices. And to make sure that everything's got a fresh toxic buff. Because the more often something's hit or has a status effect, the more likely I'm going to heal in between those split seconds where I might be like down and out of HP. Which is about the only way you can die is if you get hit outside of the healing or any of the safety mechanics I put into the build. Now, the next thing we got here, let's see here. And we're going to go over, like I said, the turrets in a minute. I'm very sorry about the pauses. I forgot I was allergic to banana, and I took a bite of my daughter's banana muffin. And my throat's been kind of messing with me for the last few minutes because of it. But I should be okay. I took a Benadryl. It's just going to take a little bit. But anyways. So, on to the next thing from the pack. So if you notice too, before we continue on, unlike most people, I did not go for any sort of capstone. You know, I didn't go for the 5% bonus damage every status. You know, I didn't go for the sniper thing. I didn't go for this, which was a big thing, or in a skills deal, you know, for shrapnel or any of that. I'm not sure I'm going to build anyways, but I didn't go for any capstone there, and I didn't go for any of this capstone too. With that, it grants you increased damage and everything else for your allies, you know. The crit shot things people probably love. You know, yeah, that one right there, and that was actually, if I remember correctly, that was one of the ones that was really talked about as well. The burrowing charge. But I didn't go for any of these capstones. They didn't fit what I was trying to do with the build. They didn't continue to keep the build synergized. So, let's go back into it. Every 5% of your missing health increases your weapon leech and skill leech by 5%. Now, this is important, okay? That means essentially I'm getting a 1% leeches for every 1% HP I'm missing kind of deal, right? So as I take damage and I actually do get hurt, my leeches increase. Meaning everything I do heals me for more, including all those statuses that I'm putting on, right? Now here's where it gets fun. Well, let's go to that one first. Accelerator. Your weapon damage is increased by 100% of your weapon leech. Okay? Now, this is just my flat weapon damage. I don't believe it increases firepower. But nonetheless, 100% of your weapon leech. Just standing here, my current weapon leech is 20%. If I'm half dead, my weapon leech will be 70%. Which means I'll be getting a 70% boost to my damage. So not only as I take damage do I increase my leech, but as I increase my leech, I deal more damage with my gun. Now here's the funnest one. Give me 1 second to blow my nose. And the reason why I say the second one is the funnest one is because I'm not a gun build, right? I don't really care about weapon damage that much. But having that ability in there was more synergistic and more appropriate than anything else. Then, like, let's say this, 5 seconds to wait for a heal. No, thank you. Or this. Yeah, the health regeneration's nice, but I can do more damage and leech more. So it makes more sense. Now, next thing we have here. Override. Override is amazing for this build. Your anomaly power is increased by 100% in your skill leech. Current bonus is 38%. Right? So, 38% bonus. I'm getting a 38% bonus in anomaly power. That bonus is increasing all my skills and all my statuses across the board. Okay? As I take damage, I get more leech in my skill leech, causing all those skills to heal more. And all the statuses to heal more. But as my leeches go up, they also increase this effect. So, I have a lot of effects. They're going to kick in at low life, like 30%, right? So at 30% HP, I should get a 70% boost to both leeches. Meaning I'll be getting a 90% increase to my weapon damage instead of a 20. And 108% anomaly power boost from now. 108, okay? And that should be before any of my effects kick in, like the low life effects. 108. Can you think of that? That's amazing. The percent increase to your anomaly power. Now, that's the PAX abilities. So, as you can see, this all is really synergistic. It's all about the poison and the toxic so far, right? Getting the status on, getting it to heal you over time, getting everything crowd controlled, right? Vulnerable because they're frozen. Everyone that freezes gets vulnerable. Your cold snap freezes things. Your cryo turret freezes things. Your melee freezes things. You know, it all is making them freeze and making them vulnerable. So they're all taking all that bonus damage, the 40% while they're frozen, and the vulnerability effect, right? Now, let's see here. Do I want to start with the weapon or the armor? I think we're going to start with the weapon because the armor is the more important factor. Okay, sorry again. So, first and foremost, each one of these guns had a purpose. At the moment, I'm using the one you see in my hands as my main weapon. But when I was making these guns, my purpose originally was I wanted one that synergized, one that kept me alive, and one that could take out the single target, because single target DPS is way the fuck harder, excuse my language, way harder than group DPS. The group DPS in this game is ridiculous and you can wipe things out. I took a sip of milk, sorry. Okay, so let's start off with, I'm going to start with the weapon that I picked to synergize with the build. Let's start with this one. So, weapon life leech. Obvious choice, right? Increases the leech effect I have for the weapon leech when I have it on. Increases my weapon damage. It's a submachine gun, so it doesn't do much damage to begin with, so that bonus 22% extra damage really helps make the submachine gun shine and take advantage of its really high fire rate while allowing its basic shots to deal a little more competitive damage. Plus, it synergizes. Plus the status power and the skills life leech. Now, status power you're going to see a lot in this build. Status power is important because status power increases how long things are frozen. Okay, it increases how much damage your status abilities deal, which increases how much you leech off them and such. So status power is a must. You should have status power littered through every piece of gear in this build. It is important for everything you do. You are a status beast. Okay? You control the battlefield. You are the battlefield. Okay, so next thing we have is the skills life leech. Very obviously we would have that in there. It's a straight up 6% increase to our anomaly power when we have that weapon equipped, right? Because of the PAX ability that we showed you. Hold on. Back here. You know, so give that 60%. In this case, the weapon I'm currently using doesn't have weapon life leech on it for the boss killer and all the single target killer, and there's reasons for that. So we have instead only 20 here, but if I had that weapon on, that would have said 42.5, I believe. Just to show. Oh, hold on. There we go. I had to reload. 42 it shows. Do you see what I'm talking about there? Okay, so let's do this. Back out of that again. Okay. So that's just the basic effects on it, right? Well, the basic stat boosts. So the next things we have, and I'm going to start with honestly, Dark Sacrifice, because the Dark Sacrifice was a big thing on here. Getting this made this a golden weapon for what I was using. Now, I actually prefer the way Dark Sacrifice was before because it drained more HP. Because as we know, Dark Sacrifice, as it drains my HP, will increase my leech. And the more my leech increases... so Dark Sacrifice will increase my leech effect by draining my HP. As my HP drains and this stuff goes down, my firepower, well, I don't know about firepower, but anomaly power and my weapon damage will increase. Okay? Now, originally this went down to like 50 or 75% of your life or something like that, and was awesome for this build. It's godly for it. But now it only does 25%. But even still, think about that. I'm out of combat for a little bit. Oh, and plus it gives its own plus 35% weapon damage bonus, right? Which is nice. But I'm out of combat or whatnot, or does it drain out of combat? I think it does. Whatever. Or when I didn't know my controller was dying. Okay, so nonetheless, when it starts draining, if it drained up to max, that would mean the very next attack I did, we got 25%. That's a 25% leeches, which increases everything. But even if it's not doing that, even if it's just constantly doing a little drain, it means it's constantly making sure that I'm getting that little bit of extra damage to everything I'm doing. You know? So it actually is really nice and getting a little bit of damage boost in that sense. Plus, it just gives you the flat-out weapon damage boost and damage on it, which, again, helps the submachine gun because it's a low-damage weapon, but really high fire rate and reload. Made it a great weapon for this setup. The next part here is Death Renome. So, Death Renome is on there because it's a decent buff skill. It synergizes decently because of the fact that I use both guns and my skills, but I don't really do the gunplay people are doing. I just mix it in there. So when my skills are on cooldown and I'm forced to use guns, it gives me that little bit of extra damage. When I'm not, then I have the extra anomaly power boost, which increases my abilities and all the things I'm doing, including my untamed power and stuff, which we'll see later. So it's a really nice cycle thing, adds a little chaos to the build, but it's a nice buff. And I realized that, let's say, just to look at this one real quick, Fortress would potentially be a better option. Honestly, Fortress could potentially be a better option on that right there. But I like the idea of the big guaranteed boost, considering the number I have and everything. Totally a viable option to switch to Fortress instead. The next thing you have here is the Firestorm. Now, successful shots summon a homing Firestorm that deals damage and inflicts burn to enemies within range over 8 seconds. Raise the Firestorm increases the successful shots on inflicted target. Now, this works better on the big targets when you're focused in on them, and for the most part, a lot of your shots are usually the pot shots, or you're dealing with the big target. But what's really nice about this ability, and the real reason I have it on, is it's a big AoE damage thing that does good damage, but it also AoE burns. And it AoE burns even when I'm not shooting, it can keep setting burns on enemies. Okay? Burn is considered a skill damage effect and is affected by status power. So it stacks in as another damaging status I can put on an enemy to capitalize on all my damage boosts to it as well from the vulnerability and everything else that may be happening, and it heals me over time. So that is the real reason why I enjoyed Firestorm. Okay, so next one we're going to go to is we're going to go to the survival weapon. Okay, this is the weapon you bring out in a clutch, right? Nothing else is really keeping you alive. You're struggling to keep alive no matter what you do, right? So you pull out the boulderlings. Okay? Now, the boulderlings are interesting because, well, one, like I said, I've got the same stat things as the one weapon before, so we know all that stuff from before, so we don't need to go over that again right here. Now, till death do us part is a fantastic little feature, right? Successful shots connect you to an enemy, healing you for a certain amount, every certain amount. This is really great because for the most part, when you're struggling, it's going to be against something really big and really tough, like maybe an Arbiter. And honestly, before everything was pulled together, I did struggle with Arbiters. And I would pull these guys out because even though that's not a full heal, 5,000, it's still a free 5,000 health every half a second on a machine gun fire rate, on a submachine gun reload rate. You get what I'm saying? That allows you to sit there and heal from the weapon leech and that, and still do a consistent damage to it, even when you have to reload, potentially. So it allows a second layer of healing. Then we have Fortress. Fortress is obvious. It is very obvious why you would put Fortress on there. It grants flat out armor and resistance bonus on a machine gun based weapon like this, or something like this where you'd be constantly firing for survival. You're easily going to get up to your 10 stacks. You're easily going to be able to get the damage increase. So, that's just, it's kind of a hands down. It makes it great for a survival weapon. And if you're having troubles for surviving, I'm going to tell you right now that most likely the issue you're having isn't armor anyways, even though that says it raises armor. It's resistance. Okay? What is my resistance right now? 40. This is nothing. I am not an armor build, but look at that. It's 72.5. Okay? That's the difference. If you're dying, it's resistance. Something's hitting you with one of their powers, and it is forking your day up. Now, the lock and load. Okay? Obviously, I can't choose that. That's just the apocalyptic effect that I got on it. It's funny. I enjoy it. It synergizes essentially a little bit into the build. Using your melee skill charges up your weapon with a anomaly shockwave that pierces cover and deals extra damage. So basically, honestly, with this build, it does synergize really well. I mix in my melee all the time and then fire off a shot. And that gives me this big, we'll call it like spear through my enemies, for free, constantly. So it actually works really, really nice in this build, and I probably get to capitalize on it more than most builds because of that. Other than that, I don't think this thing would be used almost at all. And if there was something, if I had pulled something better in the apocalyptic spot, then maybe I would have had it there. But I don't think I would have gone for anything. I'm not sure what I would have gone for. That one at least synergizes into what I have. I would have wanted something that synergizes rather than just a straight up damage. I think I would have still kept this, even if I'd gotten a decent damage mod on it. But, who knows. I like the idea, though, that it's synergy. Okay, so on to the grand poopah of weapons. Air to the desert. Okay, so to start off here, if you notice right off the bat, there's something different about this gun over the other two guns. It has armor piercing. So, the tactical variant of the assault rifle. And here, just to show you some fire rates here, because I talked about it but didn't show. Here's the submachine gun. Okay, there's the reload. Not bad, right? Here's the machine pistols, basically the same, and the same reload. So they make for a great defensive weapon, especially for infinite bullets that this has. The submachine gun here is just awesome for putting up the bullets, which definitely capitalizes on all the straight up weapon damage boosts that I can potentially get from this weapon. Okay, so now we have this guy. Now this guy is an assault rifle, but it's a tactical variant of the assault rifle, which means it's shot rate is this. Now if you notice this lightning coming out and lightning on the tip of my gun, that's an effect from one of the mods. Just like you'll see, you know, the blood off this and the fire and all that shit. But nonetheless, that's why my bullets don't look like bullets. They look like lightning. Though at long distance, it looks like bullets, which is nice. But now they wasted a bunch of ammo. But what I'm doing here is with armor piercing. The assault rifle, the tactical variant, is per shot like one of the best damaging weapons in the game. You get a lot of ammo for it. It's kind of like, just as a weapon type, the best weapon type in the game, because it's got the really quick reload on top of really high damage, on top of the control and the ammo saving of having the 3-shot burst. And the 3-shot burst version deals more damage than the other versions of the assault rifle. I'm going to take a sip of my milk. Now, as you can see when I have this up here, we got another, like I said, armor piercing on there. So the reason armor piercing is on there over the weapon leech is because, essentially, for the assault rifle, seeing as though it's base damage is one of the more competitive ones to begin with, getting the weapon leech effect would heal me more per hit, yes, but this weapon wasn't about that. And you can get the armor piercing to a higher amount, so you can essentially get more damage out of the weapon with the armor pierce than the weapon leech with this particular build. Again, this weapon wasn't about the healing aspect of things. So I went with the armor piercing, which helps also deal with bosses who have really high armor, because sometimes armor doesn't scale evenly, and will actually give you more damage with the armor piercing even on even levels of weapon as it would the other way. You get what I'm saying? At least potentially, depending on how high the thing's armor is. Now, the next part we have on this here is we have the abilities here. These are all abilities designed to do AoE big damage. Okay? Sandstorm doesn't seem like a very good ability at first. It's not visually very pleasing because it's a little tiny tornado around the enemies, but early on in the games when this weapon came out, I realized the hidden gem about it is the fact that it stays there after the enemy dies. Okay, like Death Chains is on a timer too, but Death Chains dies with the enemy. This doesn't. Which means it's literally, you're just dropping an AoE for 5 seconds. So anything that walks into it, anything that tries to get close to it, you know, is going to take damage. And seeing as how we like to be in melee range and we like to punch things in the face, we're going to constantly be that range from the sandstorm, and we're going to be proccing the sandstorm a lot on enemies right up in our face. And as all the enemies keep funneling in or try to attack us right there, we are literally playing magnet for that effect. Okay? So it really stacks up a lot of good damage. Just AoE damage, taking out the trash. You know? Next thing, we're going to actually skip right to the violent rupture. I wish I could move my cursor over it. The violent rupture at the bottom here. Okay? Now, violent rupture, shots create a volcanic explosion dealing up to damage with a 6-meter radius. Now, the 6-meter radius is actually one of the bigger radiuses you can get on the AoE effects that you can get on your weapons. It seems like a lot of it's 5 and for a lot of times. So 6 is a nice one to begin with. Now, the sandstorm, as we saw before, has a 5-second cooldown and a 5-second timer, which means you can literally just about have that 100% up. I mean, there's a slight delay, but yeah. The volcano, on the other hand, obviously is just once every 5 seconds. But the 5-second cooldown isn't too hurtful on this particular nature of things because we're not constantly firing the gun. We're cycling into it. So usually by the time we get back to the cycle, we're either right before or right on that cooldown timer. You know, by the time we're done firing that, meleeing, throwing all our abilities out, we're generally like a shot or two away from that, or right on it, or whatnot. So it ends up doing that explosion. So that explosion is, I tried, there was a seismic wave ability, not the one that's automatic, but another one on another legendary item, and I can't show you actually because of where I am, but that's kind of what showed me this big pot of heavy damage in an area is great for wiping out trash or just spiking damage on an enemy, because it's more damage than you're doing with most of your stuff, to be honest with you. And that concept is actually how mod swapping works, as I wrote in my description. So from what I'm calling mod swapping is people run a lot of things with really high damage abilities that are one-shot abilities, like the super, like the higher strength claymore and the regular claymore, and then like volcanic rupture, we'll say, and other effects like that are just big straight up hits, but they have the longer cooldowns. And what they do is they fire once, from proccing them, they switch their weapons, do it again, switch the third weapon, do it again, switch the original weapon, and by then the cooldown should be off, and they do it again. So they literally just spam the really high output of the mods, which I guess if you're willing to play that way is a great way to use the system, but it doesn't really put much work into the build at that point, and that's more about how quick your fingers are. And how focused you are. Now, but like I said though, the big AoE around me, or around the enemy, is nice. It'll wipe out the guys around you. It does some really good spike damage to enemies. I don't know if it does anything else. It mimics one of the abilities the Pyromancer has, I think it is. I think it mimics it, but I don't know if it like mimics it, or if it's just doing what it says. You get what I'm saying? I think it's just doing what it says, and that's what we're gonna go with. But it's still one of the best booms you can just add to your weapon. That's an AoE thing. And so I lucked out pulling it on this weapon, honestly. Well, I shouldn't say best. It's one of the better ones, but not the best. Now, speaking of best, though, Nicola's Revenge. As far as I'm concerned, if you don't have a build going and you need something to help you through while you're trying to farm, throw Nicola's Revenge on. Yeah, you'll have some trouble when you're dealing with a single target because it doesn't do any damage if you only have one enemy, like at all. But if you have multiple enemies, that one ability will tear mobs apart like there's no tomorrow. Before I had this build going, that thing was hands down the highest damaging thing on all my damage trees all the time, Nicola's Revenge. Now, there's another ability that's similar to it, Strings of Ears. Okay? Now, the Strings of Ears was very, very similar. Originally, the Strings of Ears function like Nicholas does. So you'd hit the enemy, right? And if any enemy came within the distance, they'd get the shot, they'd share the shock, and they'd both take damage, right? Now, the strings got changed, and now you hit the enemy, it takes damage, and anything that was within range also takes the damage, right? Whereas Nicola's Revenge, okay, now functions the way strings used to. You hit the enemy, but nothing happens with the Nicola's damage unless other enemies come within the range. And then it spikes, causing damage to both of them. Okay? That's what makes it super, super nasty in groups, but useless in single target. Which is why it was important that this weapon also had big AoE single target effects, like the Sandstorm on guys who stay still and leaves an AoE effect, and the Volcano. The Volcano for just a big AoE damage effect. Right? Yeah. Something got in my fingers. Bit me. Anyways, sorry. So, from there we're going to move on to the armor. Now, as you notice, my armor is all purple. okay? I built this build before the World Slayer edition came out. So I had non-apocalyptic weapons earlier on. Getting apocalyptic weapons to replace the original loadout wasn't hard. Weapons are constantly a drop. It's really just pick the best thing you can get your hands on for what you're trying to do. But the armor was something else. This was a chore. I'm going to tell you, it is work to get mods to be exactly where you want them and have the ones you want across the board. It took a lot of work, and for a lot of this gear, I had to like rank it from green all the way up. At least this purple stuff, the regular purple stuff. But I did my last stream, or no, the stream before last. I pulled this armor, this apocalyptic chest piece, which allowed me to finally put an apocalyptic piece in there and add another mod in of my choosing, actually. So I got to continue the build the way I wanted to. Sorry, just give me 1 second about my nose. So, we're going to start top to bottom here, okay? This is what we have here. We have, first off, our first piece. Now, status power, we know the reason why, right? Well, we know some of the reason why. Actually, let's just start off from the top. Anomaly power. That's an obvious one. That increases all our damage, all our cryo turrets, all our melee attacks, all our statuses, you know, all that kind of stuff, right? Increases almost all our damage. Next thing we have is cooldown reduction. Now, cooldown reduction is obviously important. That's how we have the skills down to the very low cooldowns that they are. You know, on top of the skills we had to put and the class points we had to put in, and it's still only down to that. Think of that, considering. But that's important. That lets you keep doing your abilities. The more you can do your abilities, the more you can fire off certain other abilities, the more you can readjust your turrets to be in the correct place. You know, that's very important. You always need to be able to put your turrets down to readjust to the combat scenario you're in. You can't be stuck in a situation where you're waiting on enemies to come to you and your turrets. You need to be able to get up in their face. Distance is not your friend. This build is not light distance. Do not be away from the enemy. Your highest chance of dying will always be the farther away you are from the enemy. Okay? So, cooldown so you can do all that stuff. Then we have the status power. Now, as we know, let's see, this one doesn't mention it. So, as we know, status power increases a lot of things. Here, let's see what it says right here if I hover over status power. Is it here? Yes. So status power increases burning, toxic, and bleeding, and it increases the duration of freeze, which we use, ash, and vulnerability, which we also use. Okay? So that is important in the base aspect or build. And for right now, we're just going to say that. Now, cryo turns can freeze on hit, remember, so that affects that as well. But cryo turns, every turn shot deals extra damage. Whatever. It just happens to be the helmet I got. Gives us some extra base damage on hit. I'm going to be honest, it's not really what it's about. It's great to have that extra damage, especially with the number of hits we put out. So it really capitalizes on it, but it's not really vital in any way, shape, or form to this build. Though it does help. Okay, so the next part here is twins. On crown turn, 2 turns can be placed before triggering the cooldown. That's actually really important because that's a deceptive way of wording it. So they say you can place 2 before the cooldown, but that would make you think that, okay, who cares? So doesn't that mean if I have the cooldown low enough, I can place 1, wait, and place another anyways until they die off and just build the turrets? But no. What this really means, what the real benefit of this ability is is it lets you actually have 2 cryo turrets, okay? Something you cannot do without this ability. This is the only way to get 2 cryo turrets. It doesn't matter that it's going on cooldown. If the cryo turret didn't go away because of it's in fresh cooldown, then I would just keep putting out cryo turrets with a really low cooldown, you know? But no, this is the only way to have more than 1 cryo turret. So you need that ability. So, next we have the armor, the apocalyptic piece I picked, which is awesome. It was so great to pull this. And the reason why is because damage absorber down at the bottom is one of the abilities that I have on my build. Now, just to start off though, anomaly power as normal. We know we need that. Status power as normal. Synergizes into constant freeze, burn if I'm using that particular weapon, but the constant freeze, toxic, and vulnerability that I'm adding to enemies all the time. Hands down, all the time, and everyone is getting toxic, vulnerability, and freeze. Okay? Next is the skill life leech. So, our abilities, as you can see, are already at a pretty good cooldown rate. So I honestly don't need to keep going with that. So instead, 2 of these pieces are mixed in with some more of the leeches. Now, they are the skill leech on purpose because the skill leech effect means that is an increase to my anomaly power. So this weapon, this piece of gear, on top of what skill leech normally does, really reads off anomaly power, status power, plus 6% anomaly power. Okay, so that's an additional 6% anomaly power. So this one piece of gear is adding a crap ton of anomaly power. Okay, so the abilities on this piece of gear are, and this is one of the key features of this build, Hail Shot. At least when it comes to the DPS side of things. Hail Shot helps bring all of that status power that's already increasing, all the status I do already, and wrap it right back around into my damage, my actual physical damage per hit. Because it increases the turret's damage based on your status power by a percentage, which means my cryo turrets are getting a 243.6% damage boost from that one ability. Because it wraps it all back into each other again. So that status power is increasing damage, just like skill leech is increasing damage, just like anomaly power is increasing damage. Okay? So even though this is a tank build, as you can see, there is a shit ton of stuff going on to increase my damage. It's all over the place, like all over the place. It all synergizes back into itself. In the end, you'll see it too when we do some stuff. The highest damaging things I have are they're the cryo turrets, the lethal devices, and toxin. I think are usually generally the ones that take the top 3 or 4. The lethal devices kind of drop sometimes, believe it or not. So yeah, so when you see in status power though, in all these pieces of gear, saying 40%, that's literally a 40% increase to my cryo turrets. Okay, so that's the first one, Hail Shot. So the next 2 are part of my defensive mechanics, right? We're going to start off with Damage Absorber. The reason I have Damage Absorber in there is flat out because Damage Absorber has resistance. Resistance, as I mentioned before, is a really hard thing to come by. Plus, armor is always nice. I am not an armor build. I have no other ways to really boost my armor in any of the builds so far. So having a little extra boost to armor is probably what pushes my armor from, like, let's say, it's 65 to, the 72 that it is right now. It does help. I'm always in melee range. It doesn't hurt to have more armor. But I don't need to put anything more into it. But it also gives me a flat resistance boost of 10%. Now, 10% is not much. It's only half of the skill point I put in, but that half skill point came with armor, so it's like having half a skill in each one kind of deal, right? But on top of that, though, it's always there. What is the word for that? Static or something like that? It's always there. Whether I'm stunned, down, it doesn't matter. I am constantly have that extra 10% on top of my 20, making me a base 30 plus I think I gained something from somewhere else, which is why I'm 40, but nonetheless, that is something that's always going to be there, and I can rely on it to be there, while it's also helping me with all the melee damage I'm dealing with. Okay, give me a second. I'm going to take another sip of something. Okay, sorry about that. So, the last part of this piece of gear is the preservation shield. Now, preservation shield is part of my multi-purpose emergency backup. Okay, it is one of three parts. It's a three-part backup. Okay, and this three-part backup is what allows this build to stay alive, even if I put my controller down and walk the fuck away. Okay, this is what does it right here. One of the three parts. So first off here is preservation shields, right? Receive 16,000 points of shield whenever your health drops below 30%. 5-second cooldown. Now we already established that 5 seconds is not a very long time. And the general cycle will cover that, right? Let's see here. Now, what is my HP? My HP is 97,300, right? So, I'm essentially getting 2/3 my HP in shields when I drop below that. So when I go critical, I get 2/3 of my HP, essentially putting me back at the same amount of effective HP. Because I'm at 1/3 of my HP to begin with. So think about that. This one ability allows you to hit critical and then go back up to max HP essentially, but still have room to heal, putting you actually above max HP if you heal before taking shield damage. Okay, giving you even more effective life than you had originally. Okay, one of three parts of the emergency system. The automatic emergency system that keeps this build alive. Now, the next part here is my pants. So once again, anomaly power, obviously. We got some more cooldown reduction since we know what it means, and we got some more status power, which we know is a piece of gold in our hands that increases our damage in every way, shape, and form. So we're going to go on to its abilities real quick, right? So first off, we're going to go to Anomaly Echo. Grants firepower and anomaly power bonus and skill activation for 6 seconds, right? As we mentioned before, we're constantly casting skills. The fact that we can cycle through all our stuff and back to a gun shot or whatnot in less than 6 seconds sometimes means we're obviously going to be constantly having this ability up. So in all honesty for us, this is just a flat boost. We just always have this. Just to kind of show too, I want to see something. Just by casting one thing, let's see. We got 444 and 877. So let's go... Oh, it won't let me cast while I'm here. Won't let me cast when I get up there. No, so it's not going to let me cast until I go into one of the rooms. So I don't want to do that yet, but we are going to end up going into the secret room eventually. But we're going to go like that. And look at the prettiness of it. Anyways, so I'll get to show you some stuff later maybe. But let's see here. Oh, where were we? We were on the pants. So we're always constantly having that ability. The next part is part 2 of our emergency survival system. Okay, dying fire breath. Now, that means by having this ability on here, let's see, whenever your health drops below 30%, burn is inflicted on enemies within a 10-meter radius. 5-second cooldown. Which means when Preservation Shield kicks in and gives me all my HP back, essentially, as well as give me more potential HP, I also burn everybody within 10 meters of me, which is a pretty decent distance. And considering I'm always it should always be up close and personal, there should always be people within 10 meters of me, potentially a lot of people. And I cause burn, which is increased by all my status effect power. Even though I'm not a pyromancer or nothing, it is still going to be doing a jack shit ton fucking damage because I have a crap ton of status power. And burn is considered a skill damage because of what it is. It's a status effect that's considered skill damage. Which means the moment I go to 30 HP, I essentially have effective HP of my max again with potentially more, and I burnt all the enemies around me, causing me to do damage to them for free because they hurt me, as well as heal off that damage, increasing my HP, healing that empty HP bar that I have that potentially hasn't been hit yet. I mean, not potential, that is still empty, while my preservation shield still sits there, whether it's full or not, or whatever. If it is still full, that means I'm essentially going above max HP once I start healing with the burn, if I'm not taking damage. Okay? Well, essentially, effective HP is above my original max. Right? Now, we go on to the boots. I mean, the gloves here, right? Oh, and just as a note, too, that means that burn will stack in with toxin, too. So you can have both on, which means if you're doing your normal stuff, you now are suddenly doing even more damage than before. So now we have the gloves, okay? So, let's see. Gloves, we have, again, anomaly power, status power, skill life leech. We've gone through that stuff. We know why they're important. We know why we keep them on the builds, right? So we're going to move right into cryo turrets. Next effect here, the double trouble. So cryo turret. Deploy an enhanced turret with 2 barrels instead of 1, doubling the fire output. Now, that is very important. So, remember how I said we were trying to make the cryo turret and do as many shots as possible to proc the lethal devices from the packs tree? Well, now we have this, which is the only way to get 2 turrets, the twins there. So we have 2 turrets, which doubled its fire rate, right? Then we have this double trouble, which doubles that double, okay? So now each one of those 2 turns is shooting twice as fast. Essentially, I have 4 turrets now, right? Okay? And those 4 turns with the firepower are proccing my lethal devices. So the next part of this is untamed power. Now, you wouldn't think that it has anything to do with the build, but you are constantly meleeing, which is considered a skill. You are constantly using your turrets, and they're really low cooldown. You're constantly replacing them. You're constantly 3 turrets, because 2 from the cryo and 1 from the toxin one, and you're constantly trying to refresh your AoE freeze every time it comes off a cooldown to apply the toxic and vulnerability and freeze to everybody, right? Which means you're constantly using abilities and skills, constantly. Now, this says it only does that amount of damage, but I'm going to tell you, in game, I've ranged up from like 400,000 to 1 million per burst of this. Okay? Because of the extra boosts and shit you get to anomaly power while you're playing. This is free damage. It is literally an AoE free damage, and you are a melee character who should be in their faces anyways, surrounded by as many people as you possibly can. There's no reason to not use this thing that would synergize with everything you're doing. Now, the only bad part about this thing is, outside of the fact that it's you're in a perfect situation to proc it to its fullest effect, it doesn't heal you. It is not considered skill damage, it is mod damage. So it's one of those few things that doesn't fully synergize back like with the healing, but it does synergize with the build. Let's see here. So now that we're done with that one, we want to move on to the last piece of a gear, and that's going to be the boots. Speaking of which, when we're done here, we're going to go and showcase some of this. And then we're going to go and go kill the secret boss. Okay? So, booms. We're back to some cooldown, back to some non-weight power, back to status. I had to balance enough of the extra skill leech with cooldown to get the abilities to the right speed where they feel comfortable. I actually personally would almost like to put the cooldown reduction on the melee attack on one of these items later on too. If I get another apocalyptic piece that's really nice, like the chest, so that ability comes back quicker. I thought really long and hard about putting the one that makes it bigger and go farther too, like do more damage and go farther on the melee attack. But honestly, I feel like that's just more gimmicky. Cooldown though would be nice. I hate sitting there clicking the button in, waiting for it because I'm faster than my cycle is. But with the 50% thing, I'd be able to cycle it in at the exact speed that I want and more comfortably. And then I'd still have 3 more mods on this build potentially when I get apocalyptic gear to put more damaging effects on. Maybe the increased damage, and maybe 2 other damaging effects on, maybe power assimilation, maybe instead of that, it'd be the 2 increases of damage to toxin and frozen enemies. The higher version of each one as the other 2 effects, and that would still be a very legitimate thing to do at the end of this build once I could get all of that. But we're talking dreams right now. Anyways, let's continue. So to start off here, we have 2 of the final mods in our build, and they finish 2 of the major concepts of how we do things. This Bear Boots finishes off our emergency survival mechanic, and it finishes off our turrets, our cryo turrets. So to start off with, hold on. To start off with here, we have the improved coolant. Cryo turn doubles the fire rate of deployed turret. Okay? So, as we mentioned before, we were trying to proc lethal devices and toxin as much as ever living freaking possible, right? The best way to do that was to increase the attack speed of the cryo turns, which has been doubled from this, because we got 2 turns there. And we double it again here by giving each one of those 2 turns 2 barrels, making it 4 turrets. Then we double it again here with improved coolant by doubling the fire rate of each one of those turrets, which is each one of the barrels. So essentially we moved from 4 turrets to 8 turrets. So we have, essentially, compared to just the base original cryo turret, our build is running 8 cryo turrets. Really, it's just 2, but because the attack speed and everything is essentially the same as if I had dropped 8 of the original cryo turrets, is what we have. Okay, that's the potential of what that is. Okay, so that's the cryo turret part. So the last mod we have here on this build is Ice Trap. Okay, whenever your health drops below 30%, freeze is inflicted on your mace with 10 meter radius. Now, normally you wouldn't see this on a build. It's actually kind of crappy on a lot of builds. But I love these 3 mods that I've been talking about. These emergency mods. Hands down, every build I run at least runs Preservation Shield. I think it's mandatory. I think anyone who doesn't run it, that's why you're dying. So, Ice Trap. Drop below 30%, you freeze everyone with 10 meters, right? Part 3 of our emergency survival mechanics. So why is this so powerful? Why is this so important? So this is so important because what happens is, okay, you're taking a big old whooping. You're a melee character anyways, you're right up there in the fire. You are literally face tanking in front of the walker dudes who do the ground tremor things. You're face tanking multiple hits of that ground tremor in one attack because you're right up in his face. Okay? You're dropping to these HP points. So when you drop, you dropped. Now you get a full heal essentially from the Preservation Shield. You burn from the Preservation Shield here, right? then you burn the enemy with this as well as freeze him. But wait, there's more. Since you froze him automatically from this, your other effects kick in. Your vulnerability kicks in because you froze him. His 40% damage increase on him increases because he's frozen, increasing the damage the burn deals, right? And this is assuming you're not doing anything at all other than just taking damage, right? And what was it? So your burn heals you instead of toxin getting on them. You have burn automatically on them at the same time. So the burn's going to heal you over time, healing that missing HP. But here's the thing. Here's the biggest kicker. You just froze everybody. So you didn't just get the shield to take the next hit. You got the shield and nothing hit you. You know, unless they're beyond that 10 feet, you got that extra shield for free and a full heal from the very first tick of dying fire breath. So you go to 30%. Oh crap! Shield pops. Now you have extra HP and you're full health, and they're frozen for a few seconds. And it's a decent freeze because your status power is through the forking roof. Okay. I mean, for goodness sakes, I think you just about freeze them longer than the cooldown if they're not elites and stuff anyways. So even if you didn't kill them, they're gonna die. So that is what's so important. It not only gives you the HP so you can survive the next hit, it allows you to heal, it causes damage, and it stops the damage coming in on you. Those three abilities tied together, in all honesty, you could probably put them together on any build, and they alone, as long as you stay within 10 meters of an enemy, will keep you alive. You know, but that means that you'd have to be within 10 meters of an enemy. You can't hide in the background sniping everything with your super high fucking bullet damage. But that is our gear, right? So we've gone through all of it. I'm going to give you a quick look. Just take in the stats that I have here, right? Okay. We're going to take a quick second to take a breather. And after this quick breather, I am going to show you some gameplay. So just give me 1 second. Okay. Let's do some more. So, let's show you how this works. Okay? Okay, so now we're in the room, right? So here, we're going to try to not pull everything at first, just so I can, well, maybe we will anyways. So I can show you some stuff. So first off here, let's show you the emergency survival mechanic first, right? Because that's going to kick in even if these shadow beasts are hitting us. So we got these guys coming in, boom! See that? All frozen. Oh no, my shield is gone. Okay. Boom! Everything's frozen again, right? So they freeze for a few seconds, and obviously because the resistance increases every time that actually happens, so they freeze less and less each time, right? But as you saw, as they took me down, those super, super heavy hitting things not only stopped, but I healed afterwards. Here, just to show the healing and make sure I'm actually showing the healing, let me take out these guys real quick. I hate the shadow beasts. But let's see this guy. So bang bang, right? I'm getting heals from something. Bang bang. There, bing. Full life and shield and frozen, right? So as I said before, it is literally just a free shield and full heal when something hurts you. Okay, so that's how the emergency survival mechanic works. Okay, now, as you can tell, we can easily keep the whole field pretty much in lockdown. But we do more damage once they're close to us, right? But, let's see here. Just peg this one guy, right? Dang, you see all the damage that just happened from that? That one gunshot? I put that out. Look at that field. All those guys, frozen, toxic, vulnerability. The cryo turrets just taking them out. Bang. Once again. Frozen, toxic, vulnerability on everybody. And they're all just, you know, I own the field. Can't touch this. Nah, 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 nah. Nah, nah. You know, they sometimes stay frozen longer than it takes for me to get my cooldown back. This guy here, do a couple melee attacks. Bing, boom. There we go. Take him down. Do the big freeze. Look at that. Frozen and everything else. And a pretty good distance, too. All the way out there and shit. And I'm not even like... You know, I don't have the increased range or anything. And me just showing you, showcasing the survivability of the character right there a little bit was enough to wipe out this whole room. I wasn't even trying. They just died by being in my presence. Yes, I'm not good. So, no eating bananas from me. Apparently, I'm really allergic to them, and I didn't realize. Okay, give me 1 second before we do this. Okay, so now we're going to showcase what I can do when I let loose on someone who can take it, right? We're about to face an Arbiter. Arbiters are the strongest things in all of Outriders. The strongest things. Okay, so we're going to go after an Outrider here. I'm not an Outrider, but an Arbiter. And I'm going to show you just how tough he is. Sorry about that. My kid came out on my second, and I had to talk to him for a second. But anyways, let's do this. So now I'm going to show you exactly what happens here. Okay? We're going to talk about it as we go. We've already shown you the emergency mechanic kicking in, right? And we're going to talk about some other stuff that we do with this build outside of that emergency mechanic. Leroy Jenkins. And then we melee. So we meleeed on purpose. See, when he came in with that swipe, we should have gotten knocked back. And just like, oh, see how we got knocked back with that? That's because I activated my melee too soon. Right? So he knocked me back because his blade got frozen before his attack was considered in. So we have all these things out. Now look at that 600k there. I'm going to tell you right now, that 735k, that's not my melee attack. That's the untamed power kicking in from all of my little boosts. That's happening every single time I melee. Every single time I toss down that ice thing. Every single time I toss down a turret, there's another, 500,000 damage into him. on top of when I shoot the gun, which by the time I shoot again, its cooldown has been refreshed. And pop, and do all this. Now, you watching my life as well? You notice my life is constantly up there. I'm barely ever getting knocked back. The cycling between all my powers and my melee allows me to literally muscle through his attacks. See another big swipe just hit me? And yet I just took it like it was nothing. And then, look, it goes to his knees like the good he is.
Hell used to go on here. Some quiet and underground spot for the father to plan his...
So we just melted him in seconds. In seconds. Yeah, we're gonna even, I'm gonna save that recent gameplay here. Hold on. And I want to know exactly how. I wonder if I can do this while I'm still streaming. I don't think you guys can see any of this. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to find out exactly how long it took us to kill him. Okay. So, from the moment the fight started, start here. To the moment he died. Let's see here. Hold on a second. I want to go just a little bit farther because I want to keep that video too. So we're going to save. We're going to replace the original. So what we're doing right now is, like I said, you probably can't see it. On my system right now, I just saved that little bit of video that we just did there when we killed the Arbiter, right? And I'm going to show you how quickly the Arbiter died. Okay, so I'm going to let you know that the video I trimmed out was 1 minute and 25 seconds. But he was actually dead. Let's see, when did he die? He died at... Let's see. He died at exactly 1 minute and 1 second. We took out an Arbiter. And I will share that as a short. Honestly, because that's amazing. I will set that up as a short for people to see, and we took out an Arbiter at Apocalypse Tier 30 by yourselves, tanking everything he had to throw at us. I'm not even sure if he got to get his ultimate move off. And killed him in a minute. Literally a minute. Now, we haven't gone far in this, but I'm pretty sure that if I abandon this now, it will actually tell us how good we did. And even though it'll be skewed a little bit because I'm sitting there letting my emergency system kick in a little bit, it should still show. So, the little incursion I did, just under 1 billion damage, right? Did about 800 million damage. You know, once I started doing the other rooms, I would have easily hit multiple billion damage, probably. Now, on this thing, I didn't get to take too many hits, but I stomped 4 times as much damage as I took, just about, right? I can tell you sometimes that I'm seeing hundreds of millions of damage stopped, and, like, still only about 1 million or 2 or something like that. Like, it's crazy sometimes. Let's see here. And we have the leeches, as you can see. The healing from skill leech is hugely important. I healed 1.2 million damage in skill leech alone. And in no time flat. So here's some damage stuff. So like I said, this is a rough estimate. It was a quick thing. We did that one quick incursion when we were fucking around. You know, but would probably push burn up a little bit more than it should have been. Yeah, it was probably pushed burn up a little bit more than it should have been. But look at that right there, though. That's a pretty good example of things. Untamed power is actually usually up there. I guess it's not a good example. They're usually a lot better, but nonetheless, it's up there as one of the higher things I usually have, and it definitely beats out. I mean, that one ability, that one untamed power, is equal in damage to the violent rupture and sandstorm damage that I put up. You know what I mean? I will tell you that the violent rupture would eventually outweigh that in the longer thing because it boosts up really quickly. You know, really, really quickly. But nonetheless, and Toxin is usually actually the one all the way at the top. So I guess this thing is, like I said, is quite skewed, but it gives you an idea. I mean, at least on the best idea here is at least on the turrets and the lethal devices, you can see how much damage the turrets put out by essentially being 8 of them, and how easily they were able to proc the lethal devices right here. You know, I mean, that's just amazing how easily that was. And let's see here. Now, I don't want to run the expedition. We're going to go into one real quick, because I would like to go and show you guys just how much... I mean, I don't think I'll be able to proc all my effects, but I think I can cast an ability and at least give you an idea of just the base boost. Yeah. So, yeah, so when I cast just an ability, I went up to... yeah, look at the drop. Look at the drop, like crazy. Hold on. 1.1 mil. Oh, I wonder if, interesting. Yeah, so we're back down to 444 and 877. So watch this. Bang, bang. 1.4 million in non-weight power and 738,000 firepower. We're almost doubling these stats. You know, 15,000 in damage increase, 25,000 in damage increase. And then when it drops again, hold on, let's let it drop again. We gotta see. Come on. Come on, drop back down. Do I need to come out and in? I think I need to come out and in. There we go. 15. A little bit less. But yeah, so you can see right there, we're just gonna abandon this. But you can see right there how easily we start going up in the stats. And we're not even in a fight or anything else like that, but just casting an ability really pushes those stats way the hell up there. Anyways, that is about it for the build. I really hope you enjoyed it. I really hope it taught you something. And I really hope that you go out there and you make something unique yourselves. You know, something that makes other people go, what? You know, be the next what the fuck it in. I've had a character named that before by one of my last is a different game. You know, go make something unique. Have fun with it. The developers, I don't believe, are going to be working on this particular version of Outriders anymore, but that doesn't mean that we can't all still have some fun with it and try to have fun with it the way it should have been, you know, make something unique. You don't need to go out and make those gun builds like everybody else. You can do the job even with a tank, as I just showed you guys. Anyways, peace, enjoy, and I'll see you around next time.